our next guest is talking about surviving survival, learning to live with all kinds of disabilities. Please welcome back to the show Grace Gawler. How are you?
Hi, Denise.
What do you mean, though, by surviving survival?
Well, I think one of the most challenging things today about illness is illnesses that used to cause death, and also children that were born with disabilities who would have died, today are actually surviving and living and actually having a life, and quite a constructive life. So surviving survival is really developing skills that enable you to live your life well, despite the fact of whatever it is you've got, whether it's a life-altering illness or you've got a long-term congenital thing that you were born with.
Right.
This is kind of new and challenging because it hasn't been happening before.
No, as you're saying, because people with disabilities now live, but so many of them have got such productive lives. Is that what you're talking about, getting them to get to the most productive part? To get to the productive part and really get the advantage out of the disadvantage, which is quite a challenge, really. But I see this a lot with people with cancer too, because whereas before people would have died with cancer, they might get an extra 5 or 10 years now, right,
that wasn't expected before. So it's a matter of the quality of life and a lot of adaptation to the way they're living now, because things have changed. They might be missing a breast or a bowel or all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge for living well.
And also, I think having had cancer and surviving the cancer is trying to live without that threat in your head, getting rid of that. Is that part of it?
Well, it's getting rid of the threat. Most people find once they're through an illness that there's limbo time because they've been through their treatment and they've done all these things, and then what now? And that's where the sort of skills that I work with people really come in, and sort of the psychosocial skills that they're called, and they're very potent.
Yeah. Now, you've had your own experience with disabilities. What happened?
I've had kind of a threesome a lot of my life. I keep saying my life's been like an opera. it's tragedy, comedy, drama.
I know. You're amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It just seems to keep on keeping on. I had another threesome with disabilities, however, because Ian, of course, had his leg amputated.
Which is another thing of trying to survive, and has come through that and still living.
Absolutely.
And thriving.
I mean, that's an acquired thing. You're walking around with one leg one day and the next day you don't have one. So there's an adaptation to that, and there was an adaptation for myself as a carer, and friends adapting to that, and family adapting to it, and all of the issues and the sexuality issues that go with that as well, and no counselling available at the time, I might add, and none on offer. Yep. And then I had a son who was born with a defect and hearing problem, and it was a gene that had come through probably the chemotherapy that Ian had had. So one child actually was unlucky enough to have this gene, and he was deaf for about 7 years of his life and required speech therapy. So he was my child with special needs, the 1 out of 4, and that was a real challenge for myself. And then in 1997 I had my own challenge, of course, when I had my hysterectomy that went wrong and I've lost all my bowel. And from being a healthy person, overnight going to a person with a disability. And it's kind of crazy to think I'm sitting here and, I look pretty all right on the outside and, things go well. But I actually have a permanent disability now from that surgery. And so my experience goes back with coping and managing through all of those things.
I still think God... I'm going to get religious here. I still think God picks out special people, because if this hadn't have happened in your life, all the people that you are helping now, with all the things that you cover in, the talks, seminars that you do, that's why he did it. If you're looking for a reason.
Well, it's absolutely true. There's an old saying that says, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. And this is my present, that I've had this extraordinary life. But you're absolutely correct, because it's enabled me to work in areas from disabilities right through to illness, prevention, management. And I can talk not only from my qualifications, but with some personal experience, because it's really helpful not to be just a textbook learner in a lot of these things. You really can identify with what people go through.
So is it hard to be positive in a crisis?
Yes.
Is that the hardest thing?
Yeah, and sometimes it's quite unnatural. So positive thinking is one of those things where it's a real danger, that you need to be aware not to mask over the reality of the emotions that are going on at the time. And that's one problem with the motivational and positive thinking things. And in fact, men and women do react differently in the sense of positive thinking too.
A lovely man on talking about infertility, and from the male side he's written a book, and he said that he had kept telling everybody it was all right. No, it doesn't matter that they couldn't conceive. But then he realised that they just thought that he didn't want a baby because he'd masked it so well.
Yes.
So, and men tend to have different reactions to women.
Yeah, and they will. Even in disability, for instance, there's very different reactions in men and women.
Some men can't cope at all, can they?
That's exactly right. And men have a very linear. There's not that there's anything right or wrong, but it's just different.
Yeah.
And men have a left brain, which is predominantly active, and women have the right brain, which can actually transfer very quickly from one side of the brain to the other, so that we can do a lot of things.
They've done tests, haven't they? That women can actually do about 5 different things at one time, where a man needs to concentrate on just one.
Yeah, I've got some amazing PET scan pictures, which is it's pictures of a brain with someone actually saying a rhyme, and with the male saying the rhyme, you just see the lights coming on in the left brain because they're just a linear sequence. Yeah. But when the female's saying the rhyme, which is Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, she's got the whole picture. She's got the lamb, she's got the gambling, she's remembering feeding her pet lamb when she was a child, she's thinking about what she's going to do tomorrow.
She's thinking roast lamb.
Yeah, roast lamb, absolutely. So it's that ability.
We'll have that for tea.
And in fact, that's one of the reasons why women get more stress and more depression, is because of the way that brain's actually wired biologically and evolutionary-wise.
Right. Now, before they're winding me up already, because always your sequence could go a whole show. You've got Top to Toe Asleep We Go, which is for insomniacs. You've said you've had so much request for it.
Absolutely. It seems like there's not a lot around for people with insomnia, so I've designed a couple of CDs and a tape.
And a tape there, and available where?
Directly from myself at the moment.
Okay. And you can write to Grace if you have any problems, and she will steer you right. There's the website as well. Thank you very much. Once again, the wonderful
Denise.
Grace Gawler.
Always lovely to be here.